That's a great question. It's one of a whole family of similar questions. What about acupuncture? What about homeopathic medicine? What about reflexology, where it's massaging parts of the feet and has a whole theory behind it. And one of I think the way that I would answer all those questions is that there is an explanatory framework attached to those that may be candidly anti-Christian. New Age, Buddhistic, Hindu, whatever, theories of energy flow and such. And yet, is there something per se wrong with rubbing my feet? Is there something fundamentally wrong with sticking needles into pressure points, or certain kinds of massage, shiatsu and such, which are based on Eastern philosophies, but is the actual act of massaging those pressure points per se wrong? When you say the word yoga, the word yoga means discipline, and there's 100 different forms, many of which are candidly wrong. They're New Age, Hindu, sort of high Hinduism. They're meditative techniques and I can speak with firsthand experience here because I was a Hindu basically before I was a Christian, and remember many of the meditational processes and experiences that I had as essentially a New Age Hindu, and those are wrong. Would doing some of this kinds of stretching, understood purely as stretching, as release of muscular tension, be per se wrong? And I would say no, but you're going to need to explore, whether it's acupuncture, reflexology, homeopathy, or yoga. It's one of those things that you're going to need to make sure that the philosophy, you're not drinking in philosophy, or it could be a different, unrelated, but your kid's taking karate lessons or jujitsu lessons. Again, you're going to there's a whole worldview that's imparted through that. Is it wrong to learn techniques of self-defense? And it's going to be one of those things, I think, whether as you're an adult or if you're a parent with children, you're going to really want to think through and make sure you are not drinking in philosophical assumptions through the door of something which may be purely a physical activity in its own right. So it's going to be something that needs to be entered in discerningly. Some of those philosophical assumptions are viewing all life as energy. God's world is personal. It is not just energy flow. There is a personal God. We are persons. We live in a relationship with Him. And along with an energy view, it tends to make the goal be your own participation in that energy. Think of Star Wars or something, the Force be with you. And that would be a kind of a pop adaptation of some of that energy flow way of thinking. There are views that basically stress self-mastery, self-discipline, self-control, that are very hard to square with a sense of real life lived in God's world. A lot of that self-mastery, self-control has a stoic goal, though it may be framed in terms of more a Buddhistic or a Hindu version of Stoicism. It's the desire to somehow detach yourself from the sufferings of the world. Christian faith takes on the sufferings of the world. Christian faith is the opposite of Stoicism. Jesus Christ is grieved by things. He's upset by people's sufferings. He hates when people are mistreated. He weeps at the presence of death. So where there's that extreme attempt at self-control, control of emotions, control of your body, that can often be subtly playing into something which is really the opposite of living in the real world as a sufferer, as someone who lives in relationship with a Savior, as someone who is called to, we are changed not just by self-control. Christian self-control is certainly a virtue, but it's a self-control that is, perhaps its prime expression is that in the trials of life, you go to the Lord, you're living the Psalms. That's a very different kind of self-control from a mind control, or a physio-mental kind of control. So those are things to be aware of, things that may not be, they're not going to necessarily walk up to you and say, hey, I'm Buddhism, or hey, I'm Hinduism. You know, a certain type of exercises may well be helpful, but do the careful thinking.